An arrest warrant for Mr. Jackson has been issued on multiple counts of child molestation. The bail amount on the warrant has been set at $3 million.
The information is disgusting and false. Years ago, I allowed a family to visit and spend some time at Neverland. Neverland is my home. I allowed this family into my home because they told me their son was ill with cancer and needed my help. Through the years, I have helped thousands of children who are ill or in distress. These events have caused a nightmare for my family, my children, and me. I never intend to place myself in so vulnerable a position ever again. I love my community, and I have great faith in our justice system. Please keep an open mind and let me have my day in court. I deserve a fair trial like every other American citizen. I will be acquitted and vindicated when the truth is told. Thank you.
It all started with the release of the Martin Bashir documentary Living with Michael Jackson, which featured the boy Gavin Arvizo. Michael Jackson was introduced to Gavin and his family in the year 2000, after the boy had requested to meet Jackson. He was suffering from cancer at that time. According to Gavin, Jackson called him about 20 other times during his illness. After Gavin's first round of chemotherapy, the Arvizo family visited Neverland for the first time in August 2000. On their very first visit, Gavin and his brother Star begged Jackson to let them sleep in his bedroom. This is the night that's referenced in the 2003 Martin Bashir documentary that caused massive public uproar. Even though both Gavin and Jackson made it clear that while the kid slept in the bed, Jackson slept on the floor.
Gavin came to Michael and said, "Michael, could we sleep in your room tonight?" And Michael looked at me and says, "I don't know, I think you better ask your mother." "Oh, we already asked our mother. She says, sure, no problem." I'm like, no, this is something's odd. This is not right. And then as I was about to go tell Gavin that he cannot sleep in Michael's room, Michael says, "Okay, I have a solution for this. You have to sleep in the room with me." The two children slept on the bed, and Michael and I slept on the floor.
After this incident, Jackson actively avoided them and maintained distance from the family personally, while helping them to cope with Gavin's illness as well. He allowed the Arvizos to use the ranch for a blood drive for Gavin, where all his employees donated their blood. Jackson gave the family a white van and a laptop as a gift, which were later sent back to Jackson in order to have them repaired as they had broken down. But according to the Arvizos, they never saw any of those items again. They didn't have much contact with each other until the Bashir documentary in 2003. Martin Bashir was a British journalist who had earlier interviewed Princess Diana, and then proposed to have Jackson interviewed in order to present the public with the real Michael Jackson. Jackson gave Bashir something he had never given any other journalist: unprecedented access to his private life, allowing Bashir and his film crew to follow him for 8 months.
We began a journey together, across continents, through his past, and rapidly into the disturbing reality of his life today.
During the creation of the documentary, Bashir suggested to Jackson that in the film he could show to the public how he'd helped children with serious illnesses throughout his life. Jackson presented Bashir with two choices: David Rothenberg, who was mercilessly put ablaze by his own father when he was a child in the 1980s, and the other, cancer survivor Gavin Arvizo. But Bashir went with the 13-year-old Gavin instead, even though Dave was present as well. So Gavin, with his siblings Star and Davlin, were invited on the sets.
Not sick at all. No more cancer. All gone. All gone.
Jackson trusted that Bashir had no hidden agenda in how he presented his relationship with Gavin, and out of naivety and gullibility allowed himself to be filmed showing affection for Gavin, after insisting off-camera to hold Gavin's hands and cleverly planting a conversation to imply that the two had slept together in the same bed.
Do you stay in the house? Does Michael let you enjoy the whole premises?
There was one night I stood in it. I asked him if I could stay in his bedroom. And he let me stay in the bedroom. And I was like, "Michael, you can sleep on the bed." And he was like, no, you sleep on the bed, sleep on the bed. We're like, no, you sleep on the bed. And then he finally said, okay, if you love me, you sleep on the bed. I was like, oh man. And so I finally slept on the bed. But it was fun that night.
I slept on the floor.
Well, Mr. Jackson didn't say we sleep in the bed together. What Mr. Jackson said was Gavin Arvizo slept on his bed and he slept on the floor.
Jackson felt betrayed by Bashir. He exploited Jackson's poor judgment in public relations and portrayed the relationship between Jackson and the boy in a false, misleading, and manipulative way. Bashir is the same journalist who was accused of inappropriate behavior, not returning the crucial evidence to the deceased family and eventually losing it, misleading a teenage prodigy's father to secure an interview, and many more, and who now, 25 years after Princess Diana's interview, is being accused by Diana's brother of tricking him and deceitfully getting Diana's interview by playing off her fears that the Secret Service was bugging her private conversations. Bashir showed Spencer forged bank statements that were doctored by a graphic designer to wrongly suggest that 2 senior courtiers were being paid by the security services, feeding into Diana's fears that she was being spied on. Spencer further stated that not only BBC knew about it, but that they had covered it up all these years.
His face, his denials about plastic surgery, his relationship with Blanket's mother, and of course, I also wanted to return to the Neverland sleepovers. Confronting him wouldn't be easy, but now it had to happen.
Throughout the documentary, he used suggestive and highly manipulative narration, which made it seem as if his intention from the very beginning was to create and feed in innuendo about Jackson's relationship with children. A rebuttal documentary, The Footage You Were Never Meant to See, was released by Jackson's team, showing footage of Jackson's cameraman capturing the moments that Bashir had intentionally edited out.
About Michael's ranch, Mr. Bashir's on-air comment was, "One of the most disturbing things is the fact that a lot of disadvantaged children go to Neverland. It's a dangerous place for a vulnerable child to be." But what he said behind the scenes was this.
I was here yesterday and I saw it, and it's nothing short of a spiritually kind thing.
This comment about Michael's method of raising children was included on Bashir's special. They are restricted. They are overly protected. I was angry at the way his children were made to suffer. But this was not.
Your relationship with your children is spectacular. And in fact, it almost makes me weep when I see you with them.
Martin Bashir is an interesting example of a man who made his name off of the back of Michael Jackson, lured him in under the pretense that he was going to help Michael Jackson's career by erasing any possibility of allegations of the past, by bringing forward Michael's ability and want and desire to help children and create this international children's holiday that Michael wanted so badly. He promised Michael that that's what this would be about, this international children's holiday, and that he'd make Michael Jackson look like another Princess Diana. That's what he promised.
Martin showed Michael a letter from Princess Diana.
Thanking him?
Thanking him for the show that he did with her, the interview that said, you know, Martin's a great guy, he'll take care of you, it was a great interview, whatever. And then Michael just figured, oh, he's okay then. If it was, you know, if Di liked him, he was fine. He didn't care. He wasn't trying to be Michael's friend.
Michael didn't learn till after the documentary was made that Martin Bashir had been officially reprimanded in Britain for unfair journalistic practices.
Is there things that you left out of this thing that you're like, I'm happy I did?
Absolutely not. It was difficult because, I guess to some extent, because I come from Britain where we don't do sycophantic interviews. We don't really suck up to people very much. We don't do that kind of thing. When I made the documentary, There was a small part of that which contained a controversy concerning his relationship with other young people. But the truth is that he was never convicted of any crime. I never saw any wrongdoing myself. And whilst his lifestyle may have been a bit unorthodox, I don't believe it was criminal.
It is clear that Bashir duped him into believing that he would make a positive documentary that would put forth the truth about his life, but instead depicted Jackson as a dangerous man who is not fit to be around children and portrayed him in a negative light, totally opposite to what he had promised. Nothing positive made the cut. When the documentary aired on 3rd February 2003, this segment caused a storm of bad publicity for Jackson and wild speculations about the nature of his relationship with Gavin Arvizo, when in reality, there was not even a relationship between Jackson and Gavin in the first place, as they had hardly even met. As a result of the documentary, the media went into a frenzy, and they tried to hunt down the Arvizo family. Jackson's team tried to fight this negative publicity and decided to hold a press conference in Miami on February 5th, 2003, which was eventually called off. Jackson and the Arvizos then returned to Neverland together on the 7th of February. Jackson's team decided to do damage control by releasing a rebuttal video. The Arvizo segment was shot on February 20th. That wasn't included in the rebuttal documentary.
Where were they when I couldn't feed my children, when I had to share a box of cereal? Where were they when my children and I would weep? Where were they when my children and I were lonely? Where were they when I didn't have enough money to pay for my bus fare, to get my son to the doctors? Where were they when I had to walk about 3 hours to get to the doctors for my children? And now all of a sudden they're caring and concerned because Michael Jackson is involved, the very same man who cares about me and my 3 kids, to make sure that their past is erased and that all that can count is a future full of happiness, joy, and safety. Where are those people when I needed him, when I needed them? And now Michael is there for us, there for all 3 of them.
He couldn't even talk. And he gave my little brother so much.
The Arvizos wanted to be compensated because of the damage done by the Bashir documentary. On February 21st and 25th, Janet Arvizo met with a civil lawyer, William Dickerman. According to Janet Arvizo, she contacted Dickerman because she wanted him to stop the media from using the children's photos in their publications and on their programs. Dickerman then began writing letters to Jackson's attorney, Mark Gregaros, demanding the return of furniture, clothes, documents, and various other items which were put in a storage locker after the Arvizos moved out of their Los Angeles apartment on March 2nd. In his letters, Dickerman also claimed that Jackson's people harassed and followed around the Arvizo family after they had left Neverland. No mention of molestation or false imprisonment. Dickerman later referred them to Larry Feldman, the same civil lawyer who negotiated the settlement for the Chandlers in the year 1993. Feldman then sends the Arvizos to Dr. Stanley Katz, who is the same psychologist who evaluated Jordan Chandler in 1993. Gavin then alleges that he had been molested by Jackson. The main question that arises here is that why were the Arvizos sent to Larry Feldman regarding a minute issue of a storage locker, harassment, and the media issues, knowing that the first person Gavin ever made his allegations to was Dr. Katz, and that he had not made any such allegations to either Dickerman, Feldman, or his mother. Yet, they were all sent to the same lawyer who had negotiated a $15 million settlement for the Chandlers in 1993, and this lawyer sends them to the same child abuse psychologist who had also evaluated the 1993 accuser. It must be noted that Tom Sneddon had the California law changed that allowed the Chandlers to push the civil trial ahead of the criminal trial in 1993, the same law that was used by the Chandlers to extort money from Jackson. Due to that change, an accuser in a sexual assault case cannot pursue a civil lawsuit right away, and the new law restricts a civil trial from preceding a criminal trial in a related matter. It is for this reason that the Arvizos could not use the same strategy as what the Chandlers did in 1993. Even though they went to civil lawyers, they had no choice but to begin a criminal trial first. And if they won the criminal case, that could have been used to secure an automatic win for them in a civil court too.
Approximately 70 investigators from the Sheriff's Department and the District Attorney's Office served a search warrant at Neverland Ranch in Los Olivos.
Sheriff's Department, we have a search warrant?
They locked everybody out of the house. They had the whole house to themselves to do whatever they wanted. And they totally took advantage. They went into areas they weren't supposed to go into, like my office. They didn't have search warrants for those places, and they totally took advantage. My room is a complete wreck. My workers told me, they said, Michael, don't go in your room. They were crying on the phone, my employees. They said, if you saw your room, you would cry. I have stairs that go up to my bed. And they said, you can't even get up the stairs. The room is totally trashed. And they had 80 policemen in this room, 80 policemen in one bedroom. That's really overdoing it. And they took knives and cut open my mattresses with knives. Just cut everything open. They manhandled me very roughly. My shoulder is dislocated, literally. It's hurting me very badly. I'm in pain all the time. See this arm? This is as far as I can reach it. Same with this side over here.
Because of what happened at the police station?
Yeah, at the police station. And what they did to, if you saw what they did to my arms, it was very bad what they did. It was very swollen, I want to say, with the handcuffs, the way they tied them too tight behind my back.
Behind your back?
Yeah, and they put it in a certain position, knowing that it's going to hurt and affect my back. Now I can't move. It keeps me from sleeping at night. I can't sleep at night. One time I asked to use the restroom, and they said, sure, it's right around the corner there. Once I went in the restroom, they locked me in there for like 45 minutes. There was doo-doo, feces thrown all over the walls, the floor, the ceiling, and it stunk so bad. Then one of the policemen came by the window and he made a sarcastic remark. He said, does it smell good enough for you in there? How do you like the smell? Is it good? And I just simply said, it's all right, it's okay. So I just sat there and waited.
For 45 minutes?
Yeah, for 45 minutes, about 45 minutes. And then one cop would come by and say, oh, you'll be out in a second. You'll be out in a second. Then there would be another 10 minutes added on, then another 15 minutes added on. They did this on purpose.
The law enforcement and prosecution went to great depths but couldn't find anything. In turn, during the trial, several evidences had come into light that proved that this case was nothing but a total debacle. The Arvizos initially claimed that Jackson had started molesting Gavin as soon as they returned from Miami with Jackson on February 7, 2003. This claim, however, later changed to Jackson started molesting Gavin after February 20th, when the prosecution found the rebuttal video footage, where the Arvizos are seen praising Jackson, which was shot early morning of February 20th. As a result, the Arvizos changed their initial timeline of the allegations from February 7th to February 20th.
They began to claim that the young man had been molested right after the Bashir documentary, and then to their horror, we came up with a videotape where the young man and his brothers and mother all praised Michael for being the nicest person they'd ever met. And at that point, the prosecution changed its theory and tried to say the molestation began after that videotape was put together. So it was kind of a two-step process, all of which was completely absurd.
Martin Bashir's documentary resulted in public outrage in the media about Jackson's relationship with children, and a high media interest, and tabloids were trying to hunt down the Arvizo family. Jackson's PR and legal team were simultaneously working overtime on damage control. Investigations were even held by DCFS and Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Department to investigate Jackson and Gavin Arvizo. So to believe the Arvizo story, You have to believe that all while this was happening, while these investigations were ongoing and the whole world was in an uproar, Jackson suddenly started molesting Gavin Arvizo, even though for 3 years he had not touched him and not even trusted him and his family. This is exactly the story that the Arvizo family ended up with after they were forced to change their initial timeline because of the discovery of the so-called rebuttal tape. They even brought a conspiracy charge against Jackson, claiming that between February 1st and March 31st, 2003, Jackson conspired with his co-conspirators to abduct Gavin Arvizo and to falsely imprison the Arvizo family so that they could be forced to participate in the rebuttal tape. But as per the video, the Arvizo family did not seem to be under any duress at all while they were shooting the rebuttal video.
Wait. You know how these Bashir... Hey, you know how Bashir zoomed in on him holding hands? Do that the same thing.
Because
Because that's what a mother does with a son, or a father does with a son, you know? And they try to make it out to be something wrong and dirty. Put your back straight.
The hand holding thing.
Okay.
How did that make you feel?
Oh, we're on camera?
Yeah.
Oh.
We are?
Yeah, it's rolling.
Oh, God! This is the outtakes of the outtakes.
However, receipts and testimonies showed that during their alleged captivity, the Arvizos went shopping several times, stayed for days with her boyfriend, who was an Army officer, talked to Child Protective Services regarding the Bashir documentary, visited the lawyer William Dickerman to stop the media from using the Arvizo children's photos, talked to doctors, stayed at a hotel, and appeared in court with another lawyer regarding the child support debate. Yet they never reported to any authorities, their lawyers, the doctors, or to anyone that they were allegedly being kidnapped and held against their will. They claimed they were held captive against their will and weren't allowed to reckon the time of the day when there were several clocks at Neverland, including this huge clock. They made an outrageous and exhilarating claim that Jackson and his people attempted to flee them to Brazil in a hot air balloon. Jackson's people did keep an eye on the Arvizo family, but there was no imprisonment or kidnapping. This was only because they were suspicious of the Arvizos and how they may use the media uproar resulting from the Bashir documentary for their own benefit. The media at this point tried to contact the Arvizos, and Michael Jackson already had experience with the practices of the tabloid media and what effect temptation of tabloid money can have on people.
We've got the tape of what happened right before that interview with Department of Child and Family Services. When the caseworkers arrive, the children appear to be watching a home video of Jackson and the alleged victim. Jackson's heard singing.
This is something personal.
And here's what I didn't hear in it, Dan. She talked about that specific threat. We know where your parents live. We listened to the tape that you listened to and put on the air, and in that break, when Asaf, the Jackson investigator, talks to her, there is no threat. In fact, the words threat, the words killers are not used there or anywhere else in anything, and in the tape exhibits that have been played in court so far.
Dan, everything about this woman says Michael is innocent. Remember, Bashir followed Michael and these kids around and never found anything that was sexual abuse. Then she talks on this tape that we've seen and to protective services, nothing. Only after the fact, at this trial, when she can make a lot of money, if Michael is convicted, she spins everything that helped Michael with a negative spin.
They were at all times during that February 7th to March 10th period of time, whenever Michael was there was always a third party around, always.
What about the allegation that some kind of intoxicating agent, said to be wine, was given to this child to make him more pliable?
Ludicrous. I mean, it's ludicrous on its face. There are in excess of 100 employees at any one time at that ranch. There is full-time security at that ranch. There are people who are there at all times, day and night, 24/7, who are specifically instructed to make sure that people don't do that. The kids are nowhere near alcohol or liquor.
During the trial, the prosecution made several baseless claims, with witnesses not only contradicting their own past testimonies, but also admitting to have lied under oath. Gavin Arvizo, on the stand, claimed it was Jackson who told him that men have to masturbate, otherwise they may rape women. Turned out, that in his interview in 2003, Gavin said that his grandmother told him that. But on the stand, he completely differed from it. Initially, in Star Arvizo's interview with Dr. Stanley Katz, Starr claimed that on 2 occasions, when he allegedly witnessed Jackson inappropriately touching his brother, Jackson's hand was on top of Gavin's clothes. But later, on the stand, he claimed that Jackson's hand was inside Gavin's pants on both occasions. In the interview, Starr also claimed that on the second occasion, he witnessed Jackson molesting his brother while having his penis out of his underwear. Later, this claim disappeared from the allegations, and on the stand, Starr never claimed to have witnessed such a thing. On the stand, he claimed he did not see any alcohol in the room while these alleged acts of molestation were taking place. But later, he was reminded that earlier he told the grand jury that he saw vodka. So now he suddenly remembers that he did see. Initially, Starr also claimed to Dr. Katz in 2003 that he had witnessed Jackson rub his private parts against Gavin's butt and touch Gavin's butt. Not only did this claim disappear from their allegations, but at the trial in 2005, when Jackson's lawyer, Thomas Mesereau, confronted him with what he initially claimed to Dr. Katz, Starr flat out denied ever saying such a thing. Initially, in 2 interviews, Starr claimed that he too had been inappropriately touched by Jackson. Later, this claim completely disappeared from the trial. Not only Starr's own testimonies were contradictory, but there is another piece of evidence that makes his whole story questionable. There was much talk in the media about the alarm system in Jackson's bedroom. Neverland was a place where dozens or even hundreds of people stayed and walked around at Neverland, be it guests, relatives, friends, fans, or staff. There have been several instances where fans had managed to sneak into his ranch and even into his bedroom and camouflage themselves for weeks. There's no doubt as to why an international celebrity wouldn't want a warning when someone enters his private quarters. The prosecution's and the tabloid media's theory about it was that Jackson installed it to get warned if anyone entered his bedroom while he was molesting children. But this is just a never-proven prosecution hypothesis, not a fact. Ironically, this alarm system that the tabloid media often tries to use to incriminate Jackson blew another hole in Starr Arvizo's story. How come Starr Arvizo was able to walk into Jackson's bedroom and observe the molestation 2 times without Jackson hearing the alarm and noticing him?
So what, Michael Jackson didn't hear this alarm go off and just continued to molest this sleeping boy while someone else walks in?
When Starr was asked about it, he claimed that it was not audible upstairs because the door at the bottom of the stairway was closed. Jackson's defense team did an alarm test, and the video of it was presented at Jackson's trial as evidence. That proved that the sound of the alarm was loud and clearly audible in the upstairs portion of Jackson's bedroom, where the alleged molestation happened.
The audio recorded the sound of the alarm warning that someone was coming up the steps, to show that Michael would have been aware of anybody coming into his bedroom.
Initially, the Arvizo kids claimed that Jackson had given the kids sleeping pills. However, later this claim completely disappeared from their allegations. During cross-examination, Jackson's lawyer Tom Mesereau showed Starr Arvizo a copy of Barely Legal and repeatedly asked if it was this specific edition that Jackson had shown him and his brother. The boy insisted that it was, only for Mesereau to reveal that it was published in August 2003, 5 months after the Arvizo family had left Neverland.
Remember, he is the witness. He is the one who saw Michael Jackson allegedly molesting his brother, and yet on different occasions he described what he saw quite differently, and Tom Mesereau pointed that out.
There were several other claims that were made, such as Jackson deliberately showing himself naked, or him showing pornography on the internet, or seeing Jackson simulating sex with a mannequin. However, these claims were either contradicted by their own testimonies, destroyed under cross-examination, or weren't included in the trial. During the trial, it was also revealed that the Arvizo kids weren't as naive and innocent as the prosecution tried to portray them.
After repeated stays at Neverland, even while Michael was out of town, they began to exhibit an attitude of entitlement with Michael's staff and resources. Witnesses at the trial reported that they thought the family started conspiring to take advantage of Michael and his generosity. They had access to all parts of the property and freely used the amusement park, the zoo, the arcade, and movie theater. The kids figured out the Neverland security codes and were admonished by the staff for breaking into Michael's wine cellar and consuming alcohol. Eventually, the Arvizos got too out of control, and Michael started to distance himself from them. By this point, they were charging thousands of dollars of luxuries on Michael's account.
Several people, including Neverland employees and Jackson's relatives and friends, revealed their unruly behavior during their stay at Neverland. Carol Lemire, Michael's former hairstylist, knew the Arvizos independently for years before they even met Jackson. She stated that the Arvizo kids had serious behavioral problems. She recalled an occasion in a restaurant where Starr tried to pick up the waitress by offering her a $5 tip. Then Starr demanded the waitress's phone number and became vocally angered and irate when she refused, demanding his money back. She told the investigators that Devlin even told her stories about their mother physically abusing them, forcing them to shoplift, and making them tell lies about their father David sexually molesting Devlin. Devlin even told Lemire that Jackson was going to buy her family a house. After questioning her, Devlin implied that her mother Janet was going to blackmail Jackson, forcing him to buy them a house. Shortly after that, Lemire called Eve Tavesky and told her to get Michael away from the Arvizo kids. She described the children as trained con artists. Jackson's young cousin Rijo testified at the 2005 trial that on one occasion he saw the Arvizo boys watching an adult program on TV with nude women and starting to masturbate under the sheets. They invited Rijo to join them, but he refused and ran away. He testified that he witnessed them stealing money and other items from the office of the house manager and from a drawer where a chef kept his belongings, where they found out the various combinations to the keypad locks on the doors throughout the ranch, including the wine cellar. He saw the Arvizo boys frequently go to the wine cellar and to Jackson's room several times while the singer was not present. Rijo's elder sister Simone also testified that while she was in the pool one time, Gavin and Starr repeatedly urged her to take off her bathing suit top and called her a pussy and a bitch because she wouldn't take off her top. She even witnessed them stealing a laminated $1,000 bill from Jackson's desk in his office. Julio Avila, a Neverland employee, stated that he found the Arvizo boys to be troublemakers and behaved as if they owned the place. He stated that both Gavin and Starr spat at him and other employees while on the rides. They would also drop their shoes from the top of the Ferris wheel. Once, they even dangerously started a ride by themselves. He said he observed Starr Arvizo writing the words, "You suck dick" on a wall in one of the control rooms in the park. And he also witnessed Starr bringing in pornographic magazines into the park and hid them in various places, including the control box of the park stereo and on the rides. When being asked, Starr told him he brought them from home. Maria Gomez testified at the trial that she saw adult magazines in Starr Arvizo's backpack while she was once cleaning the guest unit where they stayed. Kiki Fournier, an ex-employee, testified as a prosecution witness that Starr Arvizo once pulled a knife on her in the kitchen. In an interview with the sheriff's investigators, Louise Lankar stated that she wrote a check of $20,000 to the Arvizos to renovate a sterile room, but later learned that the family had only paid the contractor $800 for the renovation. She stated that the Arvizo family was out of balance, and that she felt that the kids collaborated in what their mother was saying. She stated that this family can be as wacky as they want to be, and that she knows that Janet is unbalanced and totally bipolar, and that she needs to see a psychologist. She also felt that the children were coached to ask her for a laptop computer as a gift. She also said that these people were teaching their kids to lie. But Palankar's tone between her police interview in January and testimony in March 2005 changed after she got into a romantic relationship with one of the case's prosecutors, Ron Zonin, who she even got married to.
Now, Jay Leno was interviewed by the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Department and secretly recorded by the sheriffs. He didn't know he was being recorded. And he told them words to the effect that this family had contacted him, that the 13-year-old accuser had tried repeatedly to get through to him, and that finally he had a conversation with him. He said that the 13-year-old sounded, overly rehearsed, sounded scripted. There seemed to be a woman in the background, directing what he said. And he got a bad feeling about what this young man was saying to him. And he thought they wanted money, although they didn't actually ask for it. And after that conversation, he told the staff not to let them put any calls through to him again. Now, George Lopez was called by the prosecution to talk about their efforts to get money from him, even going so far as to accuse him of stealing money from the child's wallet.
Another prosecution witness, Cynthia Ann Bell, a flight attendant, testified that Jackson usually drank wine on the plane because he was a very nervous flyer. He usually drank alcohol from a plastic thermal-like mug-looking thing, but on that flight there was not any available, and it was Bell's idea to put the wine in the soda can instead, since he did not want his children to see him drink alcohol. She testified that she never saw Jackson give alcohol to the Arvizo kids, something the prosecution claimed. She had nothing but nice things to say about Jackson, and had the polar opposite impression of the Arvizo children, especially Gavin. She described Gavin as very rude, and further stated, "The individual was unusually rude, discourteous. I remember him talking about, 'I got this watch from Michael, and it's really expensive.' Just loud, obnoxious, like, 'Serve me my food, this isn't warm, this isn't the way it's supposed to be.' And he was just unintelligent. It was embarrassing to have him on board, actually." It now makes sense as to why Jackson wanted to distance himself from these spoiled kids. During the investigation, it was revealed that the Arvizo family was already involved in several fraudulent cases where they tried to make money by unfair means. In 1998, the Arvizo family was involved in an incident at the JCPenney department store when 8-year-old Gavin was caught stealing 2 school uniforms from the store. There was a scuffle between Janet and the guards, and both Janet and her husband David were arrested and taken to jail, where they were charged with burglary, assault and battery, and petty theft. But the charges were eventually dropped by the store. A year later, in 1999, the Arvizos filed a civil lawsuit against JCPenney for battery, false imprisonment, and infliction of emotional distress. Then, a year later, they added sexual assault allegations in their complaint, claiming that a security guard fondled Janet's breasts, squeezed her nipples 25 times, punched her with a closed fist, molested her in her vaginal area, and called her racial slurs. Eventually, the case was settled in 2001, with JCPenney paying the family $152,500.
She was arrested, brought to the police station. We obtained the booking information where she said she didn't have any need for medical attention, didn't have any injuries. We also obtained the booking photos where you didn't see a bruise on her body or a hair out of place. Subsequently, her lawyer filed a lawsuit against JCPenney and with photographs showing bruises all over her body.
Later, Janet and her kids admitted under oath that her ex-husband David regularly beat her and their children, and that they had lied earlier in the JCPenney deposition.
The problem that she has in this JCPenney case is that the allegations in some ways are so similar to the allegations here. Sure, it's her son making them here, but again, it's sexual abuse, it's false imprisonment, and it's about, as the defense would say, money.
Exactly, Dan. And on top of that, she's involved her child in both of these cases.
Moreover, at the Jacksons' trial, Elizabeth Mary Holzer, who worked for the firm that represented the Arvizos, testified that Janet Arvizo had admitted to her that she had been lying about the JCPenney case. She further stated that Janet threatened her to have the Mexican mafia injure her child if she ever revealed this to anyone. Not only did the mother lie in the JCPenney case, but she also committed welfare fraud.
It's now an NBC News exclusive from the Michael Jackson trial. Documents that show how the accuser's mother may have committed perjury and fraud over a period of nearly 2 years.
Even the prosecutor said she may have committed perjury in certain of her applications. Documents that show the mother claimed she had virtually no assets after she'd received a six-figure court settlement and tens of thousands in donations for her cancer patient son. On November 5, 2001, the mother's lawyer distributed over $100,000 from JCPenney's and Tower Records. At least $32,000 of that settlement money was deposited in one bank account, with separate interest-bearing trusts set up for each of her sons. Yet 10 days after the payout, she said in her welfare applications, under penalty of perjury, that she and her children had no money from any source, no court settlements, no bank accounts, no interest income. She also said they had no health insurance, though her ex-husband's policy was and remains in force. In monthly eligibility reports and in a reapplication in October of 2002, the accuser's mother reaffirmed those answers and collected benefits until March 2003.
Her son was ill with cancer, and they were losing their house, and they were losing their car because of the medical expenses.
Keenan felt sorry for the sick boy and eventually agreed to run a story. A few weeks later, the mother called again.
She said, "You know what? We didn't make enough money from the first story. Will you run another story?"
The mother's phone call prompted the reporter to carry out more research on the family. She was stunned and shaken to learn that the family was insured and their medical expenses had been covered all along.
It gives me goosebumps. It does. It does. That a mother would use her son to use their son's illness for their own gain.
They mentioned about 10 seconds of that, and they mentioned it once, and it wasn't like, oh, reminding you, just remember that, the witnesses and the ones obviously, suing Michael Jackson for these legal charges and had these criminal things against him were trying to, obviously they were scam artists beforehand. And they tried to pull something, but that history was not brought up. You only
because
heard
it's not important to the public.
The Arvizo family also had a history of grifting, cunning, and manipulative behavior. Chris Tucker, a comedian and Michael's dear friend, testified sharing his encounters with the Arvizos long before Jackson even came into the picture. He told that the father, David Arvizo, told him that they were going to have a benefit for his son, who was dying of cancer. A couple of days later, Gavin called Tucker and told him that they had not raised any money at the fundraiser and that they needed money for his medical bills. Tucker then wired money to Gavin's foundation. However, it was revealed during the trial that they did in fact raise money, but Gavin flat out denied of asking any money from Tucker. Tucker testified that he took Gavin and his family to the Knott's Berry Farm theme park, shopping, and sports games. They visited him on the sets of his movie Rush Hour 2 and were expected to stay for a couple of days, but instead stayed for a week or two, all at Tucker's expense. The kids were very undisciplined and were disturbing the work on the set of the movie so much that Tucker's people asked him to keep them away. Tucker described Gavin as sophisticated, smart, and cunning, and his brother Star as definitely cunning, and even said that he felt that he almost needed to check Star's pockets before they left his home whenever they visited.
He used possessed to describe the mother of the accuser. Not just that she was mentally unstable in his words, but that she was possessed, chaotic. He talked about his girlfriend, former girlfriend, getting tangled up with this family. He talked about the accuser himself being cunning, smart and cunning. Quoted him as saying, the boy coming up to him saying, "Listen, I want that. Let me have that. I'm not feeling good." Taking advantage of his illness again and again until, as Chris Tucker testified, he began to get suspicious, nervous, scared. His own self-descriptions came to believe that they were out for money. In fact, he had sent them a lot of money, wired the money, was prepared to give them a car, and hauled all that back. Eased out of it, he said. Asked his then-girlfriend to ease out of it, back away from this family. Told Michael Jackson to do the same thing.
Referring to the accuser in this case, this is not the mother. He was really smart, and he was cunning. But at the time, I always overlooked it. And his brother was definitely cunning. Remember? He was always saying stuff like, "Chris, let me have this, let me have that. Come on, I'm not feeling too good." Of course, referring to his cancer. And Tucker talked about the fact that he gave the family some money and that they just kept asking for more and more.
They were targeting celebrities, in my opinion, and they ended up with the most gentle, kind-hearted celebrity of all, Michael Jackson. Michael was very naive, very kind, very gentle, wanted to see this child heal his cancer, and almost made it a cause that he would do what he could to help he and his family, but they started leaning on him more and more and more, and he got a very uncomfortable feeling about them. And of course, Chris Tucker warned him. He said, "Something's wrong. Be careful, Michael."
She taught them what to say, and they said it. They had typed out notes that they would come home every day from school, and they would read from them. These kids were taught to disarm people. There was a consistent statement made by almost every witness that had dealings with the family that these kids would come up and greet them with a hug. These kids would write cards, "We love you, you're like a big sister to us, can we come stay at your house?" This was a pattern that they had set.
I will tell you, Dan, that this family, every conversation I had with them, every meeting I had with them, any interaction with them centered around either money, fame, celebrity, and or possessions. The family apparently was aware of prior allegations that had been made against Michael in the past and had hinted that there was really nothing keeping them from doing something similar unless... My understanding was they were very concerned and upset that they were not compensated for the Bashir documentary which had aired. When they started making threats, Michael realized this was not a family he needed around him. And I think he would have done anything he could at that time to distance himself from them, or to distance them from him. They were trying to do whatever they could to take care of what they saw as a potential problem, a loose cannon, someone who was very well knowledgeable of the '93 event or allegations and had threatened to do something similar. It was always characterized as nothing more than an attempt to extort money.
In the entire time while he was sick and undergoing chemotherapy, I actually never even met the mom. I never met the mom for a year. Yeah, I thought it was weird. There were times when we would we would spend the night with the accuser in the hospital while he was undergoing chemotherapy, and the mother was never there. These kids were very comfortable being at Neverland. These kids knew all the security passwords to every room you could imagine, even the rooms that were, blocked off to anyone else, that were personal to Michael. The last time that I actually saw them, I left them at Neverland. But the night that I spent the night, they actually asked to sleep in Michael's room. However, Michael was not there, but they insisted and they really wanted to. I thought to myself, what child would want to go into the room where these awful things were happening to them? According to the timeline, it was after these things had already been happening to him. And he tried to do so much for them. And they told me that Michael was the one who helped cure this child of cancer. Just his love and his support. Well, the same people who were able to say that they were capable of then turning their backs on him and making these just awful allegations for the sake of money or whatever it was just, I just felt really betrayed.
It was the Arvizos right from the very beginning who chased Jackson, not the other way around, as Janet Arvizo claimed. During the investigation, cards and letters written by the Arvizo family to Jackson were discovered, in which they begged for Jackson's attention because he was not answering their phone calls. Gavin, on the stand, admitted that Jackson stopped calling him. In fact, on cross-examination, Gavin complained about Jackson avoiding him and said that no other celebrity he befriended ever did that to him. He also complained on the stand that Jackson changed his phone numbers and became unavailable to them. It was clear that Jackson was clearly avoiding them merely weeks after they met. Gavin claimed that he felt abandoned when Michael cut off the friendship. Therefore, to not lose contact with Jackson, the Arvizo family started to bombard him with nice letters and cards.
She wanted to live at Neverland for the rest of her life.
Mm-hmm.
Michael had been so kind to this woman and her son who had overcome cancer that he gave them a suite on the grounds, a little cottage that was normally occupied by Elizabeth Taylor, his friend.
Mm-hmm.
There were swans floating in the thing outside. There were flowers everywhere. There was music playing. It was idyllic. This is a woman who had been living in the ghetto in Los Angeles. she thought she was going to stay there forever. And so when it became evident that she wasn't, and that Michael was going to give them eviction papers, she went to the DA and claimed that he had molested her child.
But money is the root of all evil, as you know. The love of money is the root of all evil. And this is a sweet child, and to see him turn like this isn't him. This is not him.
So you don't think this comes from him, this comes from his parents?
No, this is not him, no. I know his heart.
So to recap everything, Gavin Arvizo, a child ailing with cancer, met Jackson in 2000. On their very first visit, Gavin and Starr requested to sleep in Jackson's bedroom. This makes Jackson suspicious, and he makes arrangement to sleep on the floor with Frank Cassio. This incident made Jackson maintain distance from the Arvizos merely after weeks, but Jackson still did things to help them. There was almost no contact between them until the shoot of the Martin Bashir documentary about 2 years later in 2002. In these 2 years, the Arvizos visited Neverland at least 7 to 10 times, but most of the times Jackson wasn't there, and even if he was there, he actively avoided them. Martin Bashir's documentary releases and sparks an outrage. Janet Arvizo hires a civil lawyer in order to get compensated for the damaged reputation, and later, that turns into a child molestation allegation with countless loopholes.
If you don't read the newspaper, you're uninformed. If you do read it, you're misinformed.
So what do you do?
That's a great question. What is the long-term effect of too much information? One of the effects is the need to be first, not even to be true anymore. So what a responsibility you all have to tell the truth, not just to be first, but to tell the truth. We live in a society now where it's just first. Who cares? Get it out there. We don't care who it hurts. We don't care who we destroy. We don't care if it's true. Just say it. Sell it. Anything you practice, you'll get good at, including BS.
I am particularly upset by the handling of this mass matter by the incredible, terrible mass media. At every opportunity, the media has dissected and manipulated these allegations to reach their own conclusions. I ask all of you to wait and hear the truth before you label or condemn me. Don't treat me like a criminal, because I am innocent.
The whole thing was a debacle. It should never have been tried.
The case was an open and shut case with countless loopholes and contradictions. But did the media care to cover the aspects fairly? No, they only cared for their ratings. Media's role in suppressing the truth was massive and calculated. While Jackson was fighting for his life, they made the trial more of a circus with their unwise reporting. The media was so heavily vested on the prosecution's case that they deliberately ignored the defense. Much of the media only reported the salacious claims of the prosecution witnesses, while failing to report that these same witnesses were totally discredited during cross-examination. The defense case was given little airtime and attention, while the prosecution's claims were treated as gospel. The truth was not important, as it did not sell.
The media, just the way they reported the case was just remarkable. They would hear salacious testimony and the reporters would run out and report it. They would not wait for the cross most of the time, or they'd want to ignore the cross. And it was just clearly their goal was ratings, revenue, which you would expect. They're nothing but businesses. And their goal was to see him go down. That Court TV was just reporting, the scandalous comments that prosecutors would bring out of their witnesses on direct examination, and then ignoring what would happen on cross-examination. Nobody's talking about the cross-examination that eviscerates a lot of these witnesses. And I had great respect for Court TV until this particular case. They just became a cheap tabloid as far as I was concerned. They brought in Diane Dimond, who was not a lawyer, who clearly had a bias. She'd been sued by Michael Jackson in the 90s, had even gotten District Attorney Tom Sneddon to sign a sworn declaration to support her position in the case. And the fact that they would make her their lead correspondent, it's hard to explain the atmosphere that surrounded that trial. It was a tabloid mess. It was just just daily efforts to besmirch and degrade and dehumanize and mock Michael Jackson. They think what they watch on TV is the trial, and that's not the trial.
Even lawyers you've never heard of would end up on TV talking about the case they have no connection to.
I think that we have developed an industry of would-be experts who are not professional, who are not experienced, who are very amateurish in their comments about what's going on in courtrooms, and who are willing to give opinions when they're not even there. And I think it has become the theater of the absurd. And I think it reached its lowest level in this case. The factual inaccuracies, the obvious bias among people like Court TV. How do you compress, 6 to 8 hours of testimony into a soundbite? You can't possibly be accurate.
From time to time, various internet websites, gossip blogs, and even the mainstream media have been gossiping and blatantly lying to have found child pornography during the police searches at Neverland. Child pornography is illegal in any form, and the mere possession of it is a crime in itself. Had there been any child pornography found in Jackson's possession, he would have been arrested right away and charged for it. He was never even charged with such a crime, let alone convicted of it. All were legal art books and art photography. Majority of them didn't even have children in them. In fact, 3 of these books are in the United States Library of Congress. The pornographic magazines and adult DVDs that were ever found were all heterosexual in nature and all legal. Even the prosecution admitted that all of this material was legal and none depicted any illegal activities such as child erotica. However, they claimed that Jackson used these to groom children for sexual abuse. But these unproven theories came from an accuser with serious credibility problems. Jackson was a prolific and voracious reader who frequently spent thousands of dollars at a time in bookstores. He had a huge library and owned over 1 million books, much of them in storage, and there were about 10,000 books in total in the areas where the police had focused their search.
Because I get all you wouldn't believe the amounts of mail that I get. And if you say to somebody, if I let the fans know I love Charlie Chaplin, I'll be swarmed in Charlie Chaplin paraphernalia. But if I say I love children, which I do, they swarm me with everything pertaining to kids.
Michael received so many books and magazines from all over the world. And a lot of the so-called Playboy magazines were magazines that he received from others, not that he went out and bought them. And so he had a huge library of all sorts of books, classical to children's books. I mean, he had a library that was bigger than a public library.
The extent to which tabloid media went to sway the reader's mind can be understood when Radar Online in 2016 used a picture of this girl, indicating that Jackson found pleasure in torturing children, only for the artist of the picture, Jonathan Hoban, to call them out, that it was not even created until 2008 and was not published until 2010, a year after Jackson's death. The paparazzi had a huge part in turning the public against him by constantly photographing him in awkward moments, unflattering angles, and under bad lighting, purposely trying to make him look like a caricature of himself. Note the use of this photo paints a very clear picture of how the media wanted you to interpret the direction of his case. In 1992, a renowned media outlet, Daily Mirror, published a full-page close-up picture of his face, sweating under spotlights, which was accompanied by the headline, "This is the real Michael Jackson." The newspaper described him as a scarred phantom with a hole in his nose, one cheek higher than the other, and a sagging chin. An independent doctor studied Jackson's face and found that the alleged disfigurements did not exist, and that it was just an unflattering photo with extreme lighting and improper angles. Michael successfully sued the media outlet, forcing them to apologize for their unprofessional approach towards the star. Jackson's fans organized for a load of horse manure, which they dumped on the photographer who took that picture, to exhibit their discontent and rage. They took out the most unflattering pictures and sometimes even edited them out to suit their own narratives. irresponsible and manipulative marketing at its finest, especially when you consider the smiling and sympathizing image they used for Harvey Weinstein. No pictures of Jackson's bruises, no mention of him getting locked in a toilet covered in feces, no mention of the abuse in the hands of the police. Networks were so obsessed by the Jackson scandal that the terrorist attack in Turkey went almost entirely unreported. Celebrity-oriented news shows saw the biggest spike when the Jackson story hit.
Tonight, is that a pajama party? No way. It's Michael Jackson and his entourage showing up over an hour late to court. It's a pajama party, everybody! Grab your pillow!
Does this sound like a media that was interested in covering the case fairly? The media was more interested in why Jackson arrived to the court in pajamas than the cross-examination. They failed to report that he had injured himself due to a sudden fall. Jackson had bruised his spine and coughed blood. Such was the magnitude of the sufferings that he was made to go through.
I was coming out of the shower and I fell, and all my body weight, I'm pretty fragile, all my body weight fell against my rib cage. I bruised my lung very badly. My lung on the right is very much I'm in pain as we speak, and I've been going to court every day in immense pain, in agonizing pain. But what we're looking for is the coughing of blood now, because the doctor said it could be it's still very dangerous as we speak. And if I coughed the blood, he said it's a very dangerous thing.
But from his entrance today, you'd think Jackson was striding into the back door of an auditorium for a sold-out concert instead of the front door of a courthouse. Jackson wore the white of innocence with a jewel-encrusted vest and belt. A flunky with an umbrella kept him in the shade like a virgin bride at a reception.
The media only cared about money and ratings and not victims. Jackson's fight for his life was presented as some novelty tourist attraction. Dan Abrams discusses traders who were betting on Jackson's conviction as if the trial is some sort of betting entertainment for them.
Former Santa Barbara County Sheriff Jim Thomas gave me a tour of the grounds, an exclusive tour, where they're already preparing for the possibility of a high-profile inmate.
Rather than discussing the details of the ongoing trial, they were more interested in knowing the aftermath of the trial. Even before the jury rested its case, the media had already started reporting about the conditions of the jail and how excited they sound just at the mere idea of Michael Jackson being convicted, almost as if they were eagerly awaiting this day since forever.
Meaning that they have a cell here ready for him.
Really? They're already prepared?
That they're prepared. That would have a full 24-hour camera so they can watch him 24 hours a day. He would probably wear a two-piece, which is a pair of pants and something like a sweatshirt.
No armband, huh?
No armband. And I can assure you there'd be no deputy sheriff carrying his umbrella.
Yeah.
People wanted to make so much money on watching the great Michael Jackson rise high and then splatter. They wanted the story to have a miserable ending for him. They hoped they would see him in the courtroom in chains, in jail clothes, without makeup, without his hair fixed up, without the clothing he liked to wear. They were looking forward to seeing the final chapter where Michael Jackson gets destroyed.
Had Michael Jackson gone to prison, there would have been a cottage industry in covering suicide watches, family visits, fan visits, prison guards. You could just start to think about all of the hoopla that could have been made on a daily basis about whether Michael Jackson was wearing pajamas or he wasn't, or somebody slipped him something, or he was in the hospital now, or he was on drugs, and Janet went to see him, and it could go on forever.
3, 2. Even though his fans will be with him forever, in the end, the jury just did not believe that Michael Jackson was Peter Pan, that what was going on here behind the gates at Neverland was nothing innocent, that there was nothing normal about a 45-year-old man sleeping with young boys. There were just too many previous allegations to ignore. You had idiots like fans.
Their prejudice against Jackson was so unbelievable that they even pre-recorded the guilty verdict before the verdict was even announced. This is the extent of hatred with which the media was covering the trial.
If Michael Jackson is found guilty and goes to prison, his life is ruined.
If Michael Jackson is found innocent, his life is still ruined. He will say it's the media. He will unleash his fans on me again and say it's me. He'll say it's you. He'll say it's Uri Geller. He'll say it's anybody but him. But it really is just him. He is a victim of his own very, very damaged mind.
Las Vegas, the place is up for grabs tonight. Odds 2-1. Jackson will be convicted in 1 to 5 counts. Cha-ching. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Nancy Grace. Thank you for being with us tonight.
I've said many times since the verdicts that the reporting hit the bottom of the barrel. Not with everybody. We had very professional journalists, people I still call journalists, but we also had bottom feeders like Court TV. Diane Diamond from Court TV had been sued by Michael Jackson in the mid-90s, very contentious litigation. Tom Stead, the DA, had risen to her defense, signed sworn declarations in her civil case. They stayed in touch for a long time. She really identified herself with a conviction in all of her media work. She was reporting back to Lisa Bloom, the daughter of Gloria Allred, who constantly reports Michael Jackson and tries to get involved in anything he does, even when she has no stake in the matter. And of course, Nancy Grace was the third one on that show. They want to create daily drama, daily conflict, daily excitement, and that's never going to change. Their priorities are ratings and money, and they will do whatever it takes to obtain those priorities.
We thought, who better to send to the Michael Jackson trial to give us a fair and balanced analysis. It's just an analysis of what's happening. Our good friend Triumph, the insult comic guy.
Oh, I think he cried one day on the stand.
He cried and he came in his pajamas and then...
He came in his pajamas? You've got the hair and the clothes. You've even got the same vagina. None of us can really know if Michael Jackson is innocent or guilty. But there is one thing we do know. He's guilty.
While Jackson was fighting for his life, the media and some comedy shows made their living by mocking and ridiculing a black man on television, only for TRP and ratings. KFI radio talk show host came to the front of the courthouse with private security guards carrying a box of mushrooms in bags with a sketch attached to them of Jackson's genitalia. This was supposedly the sketch drawn by first accuser Jordy Chandler in 1993. He gave a description of Jackson's genitalia to the police department that became a piece of evidence that was sealed by law. Many claimed that the description matched, but had it matched, Jackson would have been arrested right away.
No thanks. You want to look at it? You want to ask me why we're handing out mushrooms? No? Want to see? It's the Jordy Chandler sketch of Michael Jackson's private there. See how it resembles a mushroom? See that? Now you want it, don't you? Huh? Sure, you can even eat it. It's hallucinogenic.
The prosecution should have subpoenaed the 1993 boy, and his drawings of Jackson's genitals, which were the smoking gun in that case, never came in.
Now, my understanding is the prosecutors tried to get him to show up, and he wouldn't. If he had, I had witnesses who were going to come in and say he told them it never happened, and that he would never talk to his parents again for what they made him say, and it turned out he had gone into court and gotten legal emancipation from his parents. His mother testified that she hadn't talked to him in 11 years.
The racist Jimmy Kimmel Show had a Michael Jackson fan impersonator at the courthouse. He thought it would be fun to invite kids into the Michael Jackson bouncer.
I've been bouncing all day with all these kids. Look, I caught a bunch of kids. This is all for you, Michael.
All right. I've got a bunch of kids. This is all for you, Michael. The sheer audacity to even make such obscene comments disguised as jokes on television. How obnoxious would you have to be kidding about catching kids for Jackson to abuse while supposedly advocating for his victims? This is the same Jimmy Kimmel who forced two boys to kiss each other. This is the same Kimmel who in the past has mocked black people several times, and who himself has been rumored to have links with pedophilia.
Hey, well, don't please release them when Michael gets out. Yeah, now Jake.
I'm not making any promises.
Okay, Jake. So are you going to be bouncing until they deliver a verdict?
I'm hoping to if my T5 vertebrae.
He sent the same guy to the AEG trial in 2013. A trial that was about the wrongful death of Michael Jackson. But he didn't even spare this moment to mock Michael Jackson and his fans. His vile obsession with Michael Jackson wasn't just limited to him, but also went on farther so as to even drag his children into his circle of derogatory jokes and incivility. Kimmel had a picture of Jackson's youngest son, Blanket Jackson, on his blanket, jeering and bullying the child for his name, who was orphaned at the age of 7. You would have hoped that after Kimmel nearly lost his own son to a life-threatening condition and then became an emotional crusader to advocate for children, would have gained empathy for the kids who lost their parents at such a tender age. But nope, Michael and his children are still one-liners to him.
Well, what's he like?
What's he like? He's a good guy.
He's a good guy?
Yeah.
Show me where he touched you. Nothing ever like that? No nonsense, no shenanigans? But he's a weird guy, you have to admit.
Think about it yourself. If they really stood for victims of child sexual abuse, would they be joking about it? The only reason these media personalities had the need to crack distasteful jokes on such a serious issue is because they know well themselves that the ongoing case was not only false, but absolutely bogus, and hence it was a perfect way to garner views and ratings for their comedy shows and make money out of it without any consequences. There is no way to know precisely how much money the media wasted on dehumanizing and slander of Jackson, probably millions. While the prosecution both in 1993 and 2005 struggled to find credible corroborating victims and witnesses in support of their case against Jackson, much of the media, instead of reporting the impartial and factual events, they corrupted the legal proceedings by offering monetary rewards to people who were willing to make up slanderous lies about Jackson and his relationship with children. In 1993, Ron Newt was contacted by National Enquirer, who offered him $200,000 to say that in the 1980s, his then 11-year-old twin boys had been molested or improperly touched by Jackson.
I said, I'm here to help Michael. Oh, he said, oh no, that ain't what we want with you. We heard it that your boy spent nights at the house. We want to know if Michael tampered with him. I just picked him up or touched him in any kind of way. If he did, we got $200,000 for you. She said, you said, what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna draw a check up, a contract up, and I'm gonna show you for to give you $200,000.
So they want to pay you $200,000 to say that Michael Jackson molested your kids.
Yeah, just touched him or whatever, molested, right. Touched him or anything.
He said, say he grabbed you on the butt. Say he grabbed you and touched you in any kind of way. He told us he took all these people down. Now he was going to take Michael down. That he would really destroy him. He told us he took all these other famous people down. All the major people that had scandals against them. He said, we take these people down. That's what we do. My dad said, these dudes are offering this money to take Michael Jackson down. And the guy said, say he touched you. All you have to do is say it. But you might have to take the stand. You might have to go on Oprah in front of all these people. You have to be prepared for this thing. Just say it, and we'll give you the money. Recently, in March 2019, Newt was approached by people connected to Oprah to lie about Jackson. He refused and was due to go on Tariq Nasheed's radio show, where he was to talk about how it was guys related to Oprah that were wanting to set Michael up. Unfortunately, 2 days after he refused, and on his way to meet Tariq, he mysteriously died. No prior health issue, nothing.
Ron was recently offered more money from people connected with Oprah to tell more lies on Michael. Yesterday, Ron mysteriously died.
You don't think that for the interviews that they're doing, they're not getting paid? Because I've been offered 6 figures already for an interview, and I turned them all down. I told them to go fuck themselves.
In 1993, Jackson's cousin, Tim Whitehead, was offered $100,000 to say that Jackson was gay. After Alfonso Ribeiro, who as a child artist appeared in the Pepsi commercial with Jackson, revealed that his father was offered $100,000 to say anything negative about Jackson. With the mainstream media ignoring the most important facts of the case, there's no doubt that Jackson was a victim of false allegations, and plenty of kids and parents tried to sue him for money, for which one was even caught on camera. A kid accused Jackson of molestation, only to be revealed that the kid had never even met Jackson.
You planted all this stuff in this kid's head.
I didn't plant it in his head. He was asking questions. I answered them the best I can. I told him what I could tell about the place. Because I want Michael to face it.
So this kid is a A1, #1 liar.
Professional.
Rodney Allen, the man who coached the kid to accuse Jackson, turned out to be a pedophile himself who was later convicted and put behind bars in Canada. An 18-year-old Daniel Capon with his mother contacted the police accusing Jackson of sexually abusing him when he was a child. They were represented by Gloria Allred, the same attorney that was hired by the Chandlers in 1993. They filed a civil lawsuit against Jackson, but later the boy's father revealed that the boy had never even met Michael Jackson. Not only that, the boy even sued Jackson, accusing him of stealing songs from him, including the ones in the Bad album that was released in 1987 when Capon was no more than 2 years old.
The Jackson story is the biggest story at the time. It was front page news on every English paper.
We will fly stories. We will take a shred of fact and go with it like a great footballer with a ball. We will spin down the field with that and try and score a goal with it. And maybe we will, maybe we won't. But we'll take a shred of evidence and try and turn it into a story.
I cannot think of a story that's bigger. I mean, this is a story, if not of the decade, well, certainly of the decade, but probably of one of the great stories of the century. When you buy a story, there's always this shadow of doubt that are they telling you the truth or are they telling you what you want to hear?
It all boils down to cash. And you'll now have housekeepers go to work for celebrities who keep diaries and who take pictures and who make a living out of this.
We have maids and we have housekeepers and we have chauffeurs and we have personal managers. And if you look in trade papers in Hollywood, you will see ads. Do you know a lot about the stars? Is there something about your job or the people you know that makes you an expert on show business? If so, we'd like to talk to you.
The problem was people around him. Poor Michael Jackson has always attracted just a large number of just very disingenuous types who would try to ingratiate themselves with him, try to make him think they were his friend, and then turn on him in some way. What happens with celebrities so often is this, people want to be around them, and they try to create a need for themselves. What they try to do is keep the celebrity off balance, insecure, terrified, scared. They create their need, and they don't want that need to be fulfilled or they won't be needed anymore. So basically they're constantly trying to get their 2 cents in to keep the celebrity off balance, scared, and create a reason why they should be there. And Michael was probably the biggest target of that I've ever seen.
Suing celebrities and dragging them with lawsuits has always been a facile path to make millions. Jackson was a walking cash machine for many. His name alone could earn fortunes. As Tom Mesereau perfectly stated, why work when you can sue Michael Jackson? Jackson's makeup artist, Karen Fay, had revealed that he had an average of 1,500 lawsuits going on all the time. People constantly were making all sorts of false claims, such as fake paternity, accusing him of stealing their music, etc. Most just wanted to meet him. The prosecution did not shy away from using former Neverland employees who Jackson fired and who were previously paid by tabloids. Blanca Francia, Ralph Chacon, Adrian McManus, Kasim Abdul all admitted on the stand that they were paid by the tabloid media. Philip Lamarck also admitted to have asked tabloids for $100,000 and then $500,000 for his story.
Many of them sold their stories to supermarket tabloids and tabloid television. 2, as I mentioned, were involved in a losing lawsuit against Jackson. Others, Bob Jones writing a book. Others have changed their stories demonstrably.
A group of former Neverland employees, notoriously known as Neverland 5, were fired from Neverland in the 90s, 2 of them for stealing from Jackson's property.
That's Michael Jackson's lead attorney, Tom Mesereau, devastated this witness's credibility. He established that this witness had sued Michael Jackson for wrongful termination. And after the longest jury trial in Santa Maria's history, in the history of this county, lost that lawsuit and had a judgment filed against him for $1.47 million, and that the witness, Mr. Chacon, who was the litigant in that case, had to stipulate and agree that he personally had acted with fraud, oppression, and malice against Mr. Jackson. The jury determined both had stolen from Jackson.
They filed a civil lawsuit for $16 million against Jackson, citing wrongful termination, which they lost, and were not only sanctioned $66,000 for lying under oath and hiding evidence, but were also ordered to compensate Jackson and pay $1.47 million as his legal expenses. But Michael Jackson, being a generous soul, felt sorry for these rascals and waived the right to them for a symbolic $1. The only thing Jackson wanted for himself was justice and the return of money spent on his defense. However, he didn't receive a single cent, as none of them paid. What they did instead was going to the 2005 trial and taking their revenge on Jackson.
Do you still owe the Jackson estate money?
I probably do, but Michael's dead now, you know.
You were ordered to pay legal fees initially.
Yeah, for breach of contract, for suing Mr. Jackson.
Which was what, 1.6 million?
It was probably, yeah.
Just to refresh your memory.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
The sheriff hasn't come knocking at the door yet.
No.
And you hope they don't.
Well, they do.
Adrian McManus has a proven history of profiting off of Jackson by way of theft and lying. Francine Orozco, another former employee, testified that McManus asked her to lie and say that she witnessed a male employee sexually harass McManus. She once visited McManus at home, and McManus showed her a room filled with watches, posters, clocks, sunglasses, t-shirts, and laundry baskets filled with Jackson's clothes and other items that she stole from Neverland, for which she was fired by Jackson. It was also found that McManus stole a drawing of Elvis Presley that Jackson made and sold it for $1,000 to tabloids. She even sold Jackson's hair and Neverland main bedroom keys on eBay. Adrian McManus and Abdul gave a sworn declaration and a signed statement respectively to the police in 1993, claiming to have witnessed no wrongdoing, but changed their versions after getting fired. Ralph Chacon owed money on child support and was missing payments on his rent, and had bragged to his landlady that with the lawsuit against Jackson, he would win millions, and he would even be able to drive around in a 450 Mercedes.
Chris Carter was Michael Jackson's own security guard, and Carter himself told the grand jury he was with Jackson 24 hours a day, and that Carter was the only witness besides the accuser's brother and sister who says he saw Jackson giving the accuser alcohol. But making it to the witness box in the Jackson trial is now a long shot, because Carter is in a Las Vegas jail charged with robbing a Jack-in-the-Box and allegedly kidnapping a woman in the restaurant at gunpoint.
Bob Jones, Jackson's former public relations man, wrote a sensationalist book. On the stand, he admitted to have included salacious stories about Jordan Chandler and Jackson to make money because he was broke. Leroy Thomas, Morris Williams, Donald Starks, Fred Hammond, and Aaron White, a group of Jackson's former bodyguards, infamously known as the Havenhurst Five, went to Diane Diamond's television news program Hard Copy in 1993, and they claimed they were fired because they knew too much. They never reported to authorities, and in fact, in depositions given to the police, they admitted they never saw anything inappropriate.
They put on 3 guards who had worked at Neverland to say they saw these 3 people molested. One of them, Macaulay Culkin, okay, the actor, all right? Now, those 3 guards had sued Michael Jackson, claiming that he wrongfully terminated them. He had cross-complained, saying that they had stolen property from him. It was the longest civil trial in the history of Santa Maria. They lost their case. Jackson won his cross-complaint. He had $1 million judgment against all of them. There were judicial findings of fraud against all of them. They had gone to the tabloids and sold stories, and the 3 people they say they saw molested, they were my first 3 witnesses. They came in and said they were never touched.
They were planning to file a $10 million lawsuit against Jackson, alleging wrongful termination of their jobs, but their lawsuit was thrown out of court in 1995. Also, none of the above went to the authorities. Instead, they went to tabloids and sold their story for thousands of dollars. Also keep in mind that there were hundreds of workers and children at Neverland, yet only a handful with zero credibility came out alleging inappropriate things.
And we've had one witness who just sort of said, all right, I lied about everything.
But hold on a second. Freeze it right there. You've got someone in a court of law saying they've lied about everything previously under oath. What is the consequence for somebody who does that? None. So you can march into the courthouse now and lie or say you've lied in previous depositions, and there's no consequence?
Well, former employees get up on the stand and they say he told the most outrageous story. And it was so graphic, and of course everybody went running outside to tell, to report on it. When Tom Mesereau got up and cross-examined this guy and obliterated him.
We didn't hear that, Roger. We didn't hear how he was obliterated. Out here, where Michael Jackson is being literally crucified, the nails have gone into both hands at this point, and the crown is on.
When he was asked, he suddenly could not remember when anything happened, where it happened, how it happened. This man was lying, that he had done all this for money, that he had sold his story to tabloids. He couldn't remember the fact that he had been one of 5 people who'd sued Michael Jackson in 1995 and lost, owed him now $1.6 million.
Hold on a second. Sneddon is calling witnesses who owe Michael Jackson money.
4 witnesses, 5 people. They lost their case. It drove 4 of the 5 of them into bankruptcy. A lot of people who come on the stand and say, look, there are a lot of 12-year-old boys roaming around Neverland. They spend time in Michael Jackson's room. But that's all. That's all anybody really knows. Whether anything else has happened beyond that has been sort of disproved in every cross-examination.
Because you are hearing a lot of this, that Michael Jackson is finished, this is devastating, how could all these people be lying? The question is, maybe they are all lying. Why isn't that a possibility?
I've never seen so many witnesses provide so much salacious, disturbing testimony, and I've never seen so many witnesses crumble so quickly under cross-examination. I'll probably never see it again. I mean, it almost became a circus. People would get on that stand and say they'd seen the most horrific things on the planet. There would be just a heavy atmosphere in the courtroom. So you could almost cut the silence with a knife after they were finished. And on cross-examination, they would just splatter.
Another couple, Stella and Philippe Lamarck, would emerge as key witnesses in the Jackson investigation. This French couple worked for Jackson for 2 years, until 1991. When the scandal broke, they turned to their friend, Paul Baresi, a former porn star who claimed he'd once made $100 grand selling a story to the Inquirer.
My interest in helping them was that they promised me a percentage of what they got. I was not on any kind of crusade to bring anyone to justice, and whether Michael was guilty or innocent at that point was inconsequential. My interest was strictly for the money, as was their interest too, I might add.
So you have, say, Australia will say we got $20,000. For them, it's quite a cheap story. I mean, they've got a cracking story for $20,000, but that's not enough alone to tempt someone like the Lamarcks to sell their story. So then you go to Germany, you get another 20,000. You go to Italy, another 20,000. Before you know it, you're up $200,000, and that is enough for a family to come forward and talk. A lot of people who claim to have witnessed Jackson doing this, that, or the other, they weren't going to the police first. Their main interest was money, and they would come to journalists who could give them money.
The first time I heard the story about Jackson, his hand was outside the kid's pants. They were asking $100 grand. As soon as their price went up to $500 grand, the hand went inside the pants. So, come on.
The second great wave in the Jackson scandal. Former employees who tell their stories.
Michael Jackson's former housekeepers lift the lid on what they say was life at the Neverland Ranch.
The Kindoys at first wanted $900,000. Where they got that figure, I have no idea. It came down to $500,000.
They're 2 people I would not trust at all. And I think that they really have gone to town to do Michael Jackson down for the mighty dollar. Now they see money again being offered around and they want some more.
I swear I saw MJ fondling the little kid, like his hands traveling from the kid's face, his thighs, legs, around his body.
News of the World gave its tapes to the police. who only then put 2 cops on a plane to Manila. Maybe these servant stories were true, but which version? And what would a courtroom lawyer do with a story which, for 2 years or more, was withheld from the law, while it was teased and touted, edited, rewritten, and finally turned to cash? In the end, the DA concluded the Quindoys and Lamarques were both useless as witnesses.
I'd see the undergarment of the child lying on the bed or on the floor. I saw the child naked.
Well, if they're lying, they should be afraid because they're going to be in big trouble if they're not telling the truth.
In the tabloids, it doesn't matter if it's true. If you got someone to say it's true, everybody's happy.
This was a multi-dollar business for the media. They took every former employee's testimony at face value and marked them as credible, when in reality, their stories kept changing for money. The 2003 to 2005 period, which culminated in the trial, saw the tarnishing of Jackson's image escalate to levels never seen before, from the pictures published on magazines to the continuous mocking on television. It felt as if he couldn't take a single step without being harshly criticized. The media certainly taught the public what to think and feel about Jackson, and how to respond to any news about him. To be disgusted, proclaim guilty, call him a freak, call him wacko jacko, strip him from his ethnicity, and call him a white man. The lead prosecutor, Tom Sneddon, had a very corrupt history. There was a long list of people who made allegations against him, involving unreasonable search, false arrests, excessive force, malicious prosecution, conspiracy to violate civil rights, negligence, battery, abuse of power, and other charges. A judge, Diana Hall, refused to change her ruling in favor of Sneddon. He then brought bogus allegations against her, ruined her career, and humiliated her by making it public that she was a lesbian. This was the same District Attorney Tom Sneddon who failed to convict Jackson in 1993. As a result, he became obsessed with convicting Jackson, so much so that he tried to plant false evidence against Jackson in court.
You cannot falsify evidence and then just say, oh, we lost the case. No. He had that boy put his fingerprints on the magazine at the grand jury. And the reason we know that because the alert Tom Mesereau, the defense attorney, got the grand jury transcript. And one of the grand jurors said, shouldn't that boy be wearing gloves? Then after the grand jury, they sent it out for fingerprints analysis. So where did the boy get his fingerprint on the magazine when the boy testified he hadn't even been at Neverland for months when that magazine was published? Tom Sneddon be indicted for falsifying evidence in the Michael Jackson trial. And I was a witness. I was right there in the courtroom, watched him get caught, false fingerprints evidence, the phone evidence that they tried to create to say there was a conspiracy and all these phone charges, half a day on that. This guy literally falsified evidence, and it's on the record. And there's millions of Jackson fans hate Santa Barbara County.
Yeah. See, I'm not aware of any of this, though.
And the jury looked at all this false evidence and said, there's no way we can convict this guy. We got a pile of crap from Tom Sneddon. But this thing, what he did to Michael Jackson, was so beyond the pale of forgiveness. I believe Tom Sneddon should be serving time in prison.
As usual, the media overlooked this questionable and illegal activity on the part of prosecution.
He just came across like he was just trying to do anything he could to persuade us to look at things his way regardless of the evidence, but he just wanted, it's almost like he had a vendetta against him. And one way or another, I'm going to get you before I retire.
I think they got too emotionally invested in the case. I think Tom Sneddon seemed gleeful. He took a little too much pleasure in dishing out misery to Michael Jackson. That to me was the biggest tell of all. It sent the message that this is more than somebody who's probably committed a crime and I'm going to prosecute him. There was, again, such an eagerness to dish out some bad stuff to Michael Jackson.
Almost all of their witnesses were crooks procured and paid who fell apart in court. The prosecutorial corruption was extensive. They illegally raided the personal defense investigator, illegally seized defense files in another raid, illegally breached the Neverland search warrant, then kept changing their case to circumvent the defense. They sent squads of armed police officers to the homes of potential defense witnesses, including vulnerable women, to try to frighten them away from the case. Meanwhile, someone with access kept leaking prosecution documents to the media to taint the jury pool. Thambia Sundaram, who operated a non-profit dental clinic in the Santa Barbara County, made serious allegations of a pattern of abuses among Santa Barbara law enforcement and the DA's office, including Tom Sneddon. He stated, when the city officials were unable to shut down his clinic in 1996, he was arrested on multiple counts with his wife and employee. Sundaram then sued Sneddon for conspiracy, false imprisonment, and other violations of his civil rights, for which he received $300,000 in damages. According to Sundaram, he attended a fundraiser event in 1994 with Tom Sneddon and other government officials where plans to get rid of individuals in Santa Barbara who owned substantial amounts of land were discussed. Racist remarks were allegedly made on that occasion. Jackson's property was allegedly brought up during the conversation, and ways to get Jackson out of the county were discussed in order to acquire his Neverland ranch for the vineyards. Other alleged vendettas were discussed as well, to the extent where he said it resembled a mafia planning session.
This is beyond just a lynching and a railroad job. This is like a corporate conspiracy that has hijacked our prosecutorial team of Santa Barbara District Attorney's Office to make sure that Michael Jackson is bankrupt.
I've told the police. In fact, if anybody wants to go back to 1993 when I was interviewed by the Santa Barbara Police Department, I sat there and I gave them the names. They're on record. They have all of this information, but they were scanning Michael Jackson. All they cared about was trying to find something on Michael Jackson.
Who you said, by the way, did not abuse you.
Who Michael was innocent, and that was what the interview was about with the police in 1993. I told them he is not that guy, and they said, well, maybe you just don't understand your friend. And I said, no, I know the difference between pedophiles and somebody who's not a pedophile because I've been molested. Here's the names. Go investigate.
You said that there was one gentleman in the industry who did not take advantage of you. He was not a pedophile. You said that was Michael Jackson.
Of all people. I'm saying that there are people that were the people that did this to both me and Corey that are still working, they're still out there, and they're some of the richest, most powerful people in this business.
And they are
And they do not want me saying what I'm saying right now.
Are you saying that they're pedophiles?
Yes.
And that they're still in this business?
Yes.
That's what, and that's what you're saying in your book. When you talk to when you talk to
And they don't
parents,
want me here right now. Trust
Corey,
me. They want me dead.
there are a lot of parents out here who want to put their kids in this business. Their kids are cute, they're great actors. What would you say to a parent who just has the best of intentions, who's coming here with their child? If you're saying that there's a lot of predators in this industry.
It's a many-feathered bird, okay? Be careful what you wish for. That's what I'll tell you. You know, don't go into it with naivety. Don't go into it thinking that it's all roses and sunglasses and
damaging an entire industry.
You're
damaging an entire industry.
Barbara Walters is the same woman who actively spent years to get Jackson convicted in the court of public opinion and to bring justice to his so-called victims, but scolded Corey Feldman, who has been a victim of Hollywood pedophilia for years and has been warning the public of the real side of Hollywood. She's the same woman who went to high-profile parties while getting herself clicked with Ghislaine Maxwell, a madam who worked for Jeffrey Epstein, who ran a sex trafficking ring and traded young girls to elite Hollywood pedophiles. This depicts how hypocritical the American journalists are. They have been using Jackson as a scapegoat to protect the real predators of Hollywood. Ever wondered why we don't get to hear anything about known and convicted pedophiles in Hollywood? Why Weinstein's actions were not covered in media? Why Hollywood was busy celebrating convicted pedophiles like Roman Polanski, but dragged a vindicated black man?
Years old, and somebody, which I was trying to say this to my friends who had children, you're 7 years old and someone is stroking your penis. It feels good. Even though you don't have a name for what that is, it feels good.
Ever wondered why we never hear any allegations against Oprah in the media? Whether it's her father getting accused of assault, or her school in Africa being in the light in relation to child trafficking, or her silence on her best friend Harvey Weinstein, or John of God, whom she even promoted. You will never hear stories that demeans her reputation, even if they're true. That's the treatment a black person in America gets when they follow the rules and not go out of their league to expose the people in power, something that Jackson never did, for which he had to pay the price throughout his life. The media was certainly disgusted that a black man owned half of the music industry. The media was angry that a black man won the hearts of every race, every age, every demographic, globally. The media was repulsed that a black man had more success and money than their white idols.